This is Marcus Whitney's audio universe.
Like, you gotta do the work. You gotta show up and just do the work.
And so we're showing up to do the work. It's Friday. I wish it was Saturday. The only thing making this day okay is that I'm about to have this awesome conversation. I'm so tired, y'all. I'm just like, I don't know. I slept until 8 a.m. this morning, which I basically don't ever do. It's like 8, and I looked at my Aura ring. It was like 8.5 hours of sleep. And I think my body's just like, dude, you're doing a great job, blah, blah, blah. But seriously, it is time for a break. So this 3-day weekend could not come any sooner or at any better time. But at the same time, neither could this conversation I'm about to have, because it is nice to be stimulated mentally, emotionally, and my friend Chris does that for me every single time that we talk. He leaves me sort of viewing the world very, very differently. I was fortunate enough to meet him probably 5 or 6 years ago. And, you know, he was doing some amazing stuff then, and he came and he spoke at the very first Health Further conference, which was amazing, which was a really big get. And, you know, I just feel fortunate that we've been able to stay in touch and remain friends. And I just am so grateful that he is taking 30 minutes of his day to speak with me and to speak with you. So without any further ado, the world's most connected human, Chris Dancy. Chris, what's up, man?
Hey, Marcus. I didn't know you had all this music and all this other kind of stuff.
Surprise!
Right? Like, I keep waiting for Casey Kasem. They're like, to this week's top 10, coming in at number 2 with a bullet.
Yeah, you know, it's a way to have fun. I got my little board here. I need to start adding like little claps and audiences and laugh tracks and stuff like that. No, I'm just joking.
I would love that.
Would you? Okay, then I'm gonna do it next week. I'm gonna.
I think anything that can add to it. I mean, ever since like a lot of talk show hosts are doing that now online, you know, laugh tracks actually are a meta way to remind us that we should be feeling something when we're not.
Yeah. I feel that. I have actually been thinking over the last week it's time to sweeten up the show a little bit. And that's like the easiest first thing to do. So I'm sorry I don't have it for you, but I will be bringing it in here soon. Don't you worry. Okay. We said we were going to start this with a talk about Cyborg. But first, if we can, I know you've said this so many times, give us the, I don't know, minute or 2 minute background on you and how you became known as the world's most connected human.
Jesus. Yeah. So 2008. Well, we can do this in a minute. I bet we can do this in a minute. 2008, I turned 40. I weighed 220 pounds. I smoked 2 packs of cigarettes a day. Drank about 36 cans of Diet Coke a day. I was on blood pressure medicine. I'd been in antidepressants for 20 some odd years. It was a good year. I was well paid by my employer. I mean, you couldn't go wrong, except for my life was falling apart, like in every other way possible, other than I had this great 6-figure job. And I was just online one day and just kind of said to me, you know, I went to look at my search history for something in a browser, and I just thought, well, shit, this is my whole day. This is like how I think. And then just started like the whole idea of web cookies and like how all that works. So slowly between 2008 and 2010, I started writing little connections using something called Yahoo Pipes, basically a little piece of software that says, if you do something here, it happens there. And just little teeny connections, like little things like that, you know, scrape Facebook, scrape MySpace, scrape my web searches, scrape music I listen to. And I started categorizing them like, okay, this goes into social, this goes into opinion, this goes into work, send an email, scrape that. Well, by 2010, I'd gotten like a lot of these feedback loops, and I started seeing these amazing patterns, and all the information wrote to my Google Calendar at the time. So I could see these huge patterns of like really bad, unhealthy behavior. So I spent the next 2 years creating more connections and then creating feedback loops. So when something got like multiple bad things happen in a row, I push myself a message that says, okay, you're probably heading for a breakdown. And we're not talking the orchestral hit from the 80s. I'm talking like a real breakdown.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, and then I was at a conference and there was a guy sitting behind me and he saw my Google Calendar and he saw all these things going into it automatically. Like I was typing fast, but it was just happening. And he worked at Wired Magazine and reached out to me like a month later and said, hey, I'd love to talk to you more about this thing you're doing. And I was at something called Cyborg Camp. So 2012, I was at Cyborg Camp. And I told him, and he wrote this article called The World's Most Obsolete Tech Worker Rebuilds Himself for the Future. And then within a month, I was on Bloomberg television. And a year later, I was on the cover of Business Week. Had a TED Talk that same fall. That was 2014. Since then, there have been 5 TED Talks about me. A year later, I had my first Showtime special, which is on Netflix, Darknet, and then got paid to write a book. And then, dude, it's nuts. I don't know.
Yeah, but all of that was deserving, and I can say that because I remember meeting you, and it's all very, very legitimate. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, not only do you have the wearables, and I put myself in the class of cyborg, and I want you to give a definition to kind of frame up our conversation, but you really do have these tools that you've built. It's funny that you mentioned Yahoo Pipes, and my buddy Chris Brogan just commented on it on LinkedIn saying, "Oh man, I miss Yahoo Pipes." You know, because that was like old school Zapier, right? You know what I mean, or Zapier, or whatever it is. You know, but you did seek out all of the ways that you could grab the data, whether through official APIs or scraping stuff, and you started
hundreds of secret Twitter accounts which still exist to the day, at Dancy Air, at Dancy Entertain. They're all there.
Yeah.
But again, I think people sometimes get confused. Like, my story is about devices, and my story is about self-autonomy. It's really about, how do I extract myself from everything I touch? We usually do that with people. You know, as you meet people and you grow and they retell you stories about yourself.
Yeah.
But that's kind of a lost art of discovering who you are through the people you love. So I just thought, I'll do it through the devices I love.
And you also were able to pull, you know, other things. I mean, you've got an automated home, but I remember one of the big things that was like a big aha for me was when you were mapping up the weather wherever you were to everything else that was going on and being able to find patterns there. And I think that's when you start realizing, wow, we do have access to information that really can help us to understand who we are so much better. And instead, we're on the phone, but we're like in this, you know, I don't know. I don't want to overgeneralize or say something like it's mindless, but
no digital duality.
Yeah. But it's not necessarily the best self-exploration model.
No, but neither are people, right? So, you know, how often do we kiss the people we love, and it's a kiss versus kissing them and like something takes our breath away for a second. So I don't hold any specialized candle up to mindlessly scrolling versus purposely, you know, discovering yourself through the phone. You know, I think if there's the biggest problem we have to address this decade is how unwilling we are to talk about it's okay to be broken sometimes.
Yeah. Can you define cyborg real quick, and then I want to jump back into brokenness. It's been a theme on the show recently. People I've been talking to. I just talked to Zach Williams earlier this week, and that was a lot of what we talked about.
So I mean, I love the term cyborg. In 2010, my cyborg grandmother, Amber Case, had a talk at South by called "We're All Cyborgs Now." You know, but at its base level, it's just any organism. So that means something living, right? You can't have a cyborg tree. Well, I guess you could. What couldn't you have a cyborg? Cyborg rock, well, if you want to go there. But so anything living that has an extended relationship because of a piece of technology that depends on a feedback loop. So you need two things: something living, some piece of technology, and some feedback loop. So all of a sudden you realize that eyeglasses make you a cyborg.
Right.
Like suddenly you put on this piece of technology and you can see better. And the feedback loop is I can see. You take the glasses off, the feedback loop's not there. You can still function, but you're not dependent on it, right? Some people have really, dependent things. So again, eyeglasses, shoes. But I think in contemporary culture, when we think of cyborg, we think of the biomechanical thing, a robot or one of these things. And those, I mean, yes, they have cybernetic principles, but cybernetics, if you're into computing, really is any system that becomes dependent on itself. And once you kind of unpack it, and there's the Cyborg Manifesto, and there's all sorts of academic studies on systems theory around cybernetic feedback loops and feedback loops in general, you realize, okay, this is a pretty simple problem we've got going on now. We're not feeding back the right things. We're feeding back the things that kind of make us, we've never been more human. I mean, that's the other thing that, it's just so obvious to me. We're so alive with our connections.
So now that we've laid the groundwork for what a cyborg is, what is a mindful cyborg?
Yeah. So I like Mindful Cyborg, sort of the world's most connected man. So, when you think about mindfulness, again, it's got a bad rap, kind of like a lot of other things that got popular in culture today. But mindfulness is just a meta awareness of a process. Already I'm going back into the technology, but to be, I mean, if you go into like clinic, the kind of traditional, it's moment by moment, non-judgmental awareness is kind of like the old school mindfulness. But to me, when I think about mindfulness, it's just paying particular attention without any heavy judgment to something. I'm also a practicing Buddhist. So, I can keep both things in my head. So being a mindful cyborg literally is what some people do now. They're very aware. Now, maybe it's just, you notice that your guy you're dating hasn't marked your text message read. You're a mindful cyborg. You're paying attention. You're looking for the cues, right? But some people lose their mind, right? Some people start screenshotting stuff so they can then weaponize that feedback loop, right? So again, I think we need to teach our kids and teach each other and talk about what does it mean to love and live inside devices, because there's no shame in it. What the shame is, we somehow have elevated life without devices when none of us can actually successfully do that.
Right. And so because we've sort of made it more about life with versus without, we've avoided the how to do it with in the best possible way, right? Or in the healthiest possible way, or
in service to ourselves and each other.
Yeah, love that.
Yeah.
So where do you see us today? We're all spending a tremendous amount of time on our phones, on devices, on social networks. Where you've been doing this for a while now, right?
My book actually was called "I Am You Tomorrow," and they changed the name at the last moment to do an unplug. Sorry to interrupt, but it's funny because I sometimes look at you all like, through my lens of Grandpa Cyborg.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's cute. I remember 2016. Oh, that's cute. I remember 2014. Like, I always meet versions of myself. And what makes it so interesting to mess with people is, once you've got a little bit of, and it's true, like even without all of this talk, once you've got a little bit of experience on someone, you can really mess with them, right? So that's where you really have to be careful because you also want to be sensitive. But yeah, I mean, today's an interesting time, and I think kids feel it, people feel it, but there are a lot of confluence in things, not just the technology happening. I mean, you've got planetary collapse, you've got social unrest and pandemics. Again, interesting things, but not earth-shattering, right? I don't think any one of these things really is a game changer. While some people would say that's not true, you've got deep adaptation movements happening within climate change people. You've got mutual aid networks happening within the civil unrest. I mean, all of these things, all of these challenges have systematic solutions happening in real time.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never been more confident in our ability to feel like we're fucking up when we're doing amazing.
So how has that happened, right? One of the things that I feel is so important about me doing this show, you had asked me about my audience, and I told you that the show has become a bit of a practice for me, really just to make sure that in the time that I have in the day, I'm controlling it by putting high quality conversations with people that I respect and care about into my day. It's a way to sort of enforce the values of what I want to be doing, largely because even with the best efforts in terms of curation of what I consume through social and through my friend groups and social, there is definitely very general waves of information that are not that hopeful. I guess is the best way I would put it. That are not that hopeful.
Yeah.
I think about the fact that I felt like I was the friend in my group that was like texting everybody, oh my God, go to YouTube right now and watch the Elon Musk Neuralink thing. Of course, I didn't hit you with that. I said, okay, we got to talk about this because I knew you knew way more about that than anyone else that I would know. But for the people who I know in my life, I was the one sort of sharing that with them,
Right.
And not so much sharing it like, oh my God, this is Dark Mirror, although that's of course funny, but really just I'm experiencing low energy neurofeedback right now. So for me, this is very real. This idea of, tapping into our brains and just breaking barriers of science that we've never, come close to yet, and understanding, wow, maybe we can fix blindness. Maybe we can fix, people who are paralyzed with this kind of advancement. So there is a lot of hope, but there's fear also in the unknown. And what if these things get in the wrong hands?
Sounds a lot like the time of Jesus.
That's really interesting.
A lot of hope, a lot of fear. Maybe we can fix blindness. I mean, this is not new.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I often think that you've got your techno optimists and you've got your techno dystopian people. But I'd like to go back a little bit to what you were just saying about this. The fact that you said you have these conversations when we talked about your audience.
Right.
And I think that's so important because there's a difference between creating content for content's sake and creating content that just enriches the world. And I think so many people don't understand that even bakers have to eat. It's just, do they eat their own bread? And I think what you're saying, and to me, is you have these conversations because they enrich you. And again, there's no shame in that, right? It's what you do to support Marcus Whitney. But you said something really just as enlightening right after that. You said, in some of my circles, it's not all this optimism. And I think the fact that you're even aware of like the types of feeds you're getting probably puts you a little bit further ahead. But if you're on your own journey of wearables and all these other things, it's hard to kind of miss the fact that if you wear a sensor long enough, you become one, right?
Yeah.
So like, what do you sense? How do you sense it? I mean, people I know can just tell changes in the Facebook algorithm lately. Like, okay, and it doesn't. You see a lot of older people like, hey, I'll see how many of my friends will share this. It's like, okay, you're basically doing A/B testing, but you don't know that's what you're doing.
Right.
Like
right.
a lot of these memes and things. So, I think it's, again, what you're describing is so powerful and so important for you to continue to bring that up, because if you allow your conversations to kind of devolve into the triteness of the pandemic or the apparent urgency of climate, you're kind of missing the opportunity, because at the end of the day, Marcus Whitney has to die with Marcus Whitney, not with his listeners, not with his family, not with his jobs, not with his accomplishments. You got to get comfortable with dead you.
Let's talk about the digital self.
Yeah, I like the digital self.
Yeah, let's talk about the digital self. We it is one of the things that I bought for my boys early on that I haven't turned over to them. They have a lot of things as they're gaining more and more independence and being more
little cyborgs.
Yeah, more emancipated, but they have not yet claimed their domains. But they have them. They have them in waiting, right? They have their domains for when it becomes important to them to have a representation there. Talk about the digital self. It's something that I spend a lot of time investing in, and I see it as being important and valuable, but I don't know that I can articulate exactly why. There's obviously things when people go and search for me, when there's a body of things there, it definitely, for someone who doesn't know who I am, it's very helpful, right? There's a lot of credibility there. There's a lot of, this person is a substantial person because of this. But maybe give me another way to like think about the digital self.
I think you're thinking about it correctly. At least you're thinking about it in a way right now that I think most people should think about it. So many younger people today, I'll now go back to digital self origins in a moment. Some people today think of the digital self as an influencer, or they think of the digital self as a verified account, or any of the other things that are kind of the hallmarks of kind of first citizen digital membership. But at the end of the day, I think, the digital self is really about your evolution. How we evolve and experience ourselves is universally similar now. So everybody gets their memories sent back to them. A year ago on this day, you did this. Everybody searched for old emails and saw how they used to write. Again, the reason there are all these theories around mass consciousness and global awakening and all these other things are at its base is we now all have equal access to the same interface to explore ourselves and each other, which takes us back to why are some people more successful and some people aren't. If your goal is to create a canon of work, that's interesting, but I'll be honest, it's kind of digital navel gazing. If your goal is to create a canon for yourself so that you can go back, I tweet a lot of random shit. But I use advanced.twitter.com all the time because I like to, when did I say that? And what was I thinking? And what was that day? So I think the digital self is really key for just development emotionally. Again, let's unbundle this from you give good search.
This is good. I give good search. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, some guys give good search. but again, it starts with domain names, it starts with emails, then it starts, and today the digital self has been even consumerized. Like, are you an Apple or are you an Android?
Yeah.
Hey email was like this big thing. It was the new Izod shirt. You
Right.
can tell I'm over 50, right? So I think it's so critically important we unpack and unbundle digital self from digital perceived importance, because everybody who's rich wants to be influential. Everybody who's influential wants to be rich. Everybody who's popular wants anonymity. And again, how we express that and talk about and share that online really separates the wheat from the shaft when it comes to regular people. I don't follow a lot of influential people online. I keep my friend circle very, very small online because my attention is so important to me. And I think if people understood how simple they are, they would care more about their digital self and their digital footprint in some ways, and then just forget it in others. I mean, I'm pretty sure like half the Karen episodes without a mask where they're filming themselves, it's just because they're lonely. Like, the digital self has become perverted in so many ways today. As many people as I saw protesting and in peaceful demonstrations all over the United States, I'd say half of them had cameras out. Right. So, I mean, this idea of documenting yourself, it has never been more obvious, but why we do it and what's important. What are we trying to get at? One of my favorite things about the digital self I love to watch people do is the minute they have a tweet get slightly popular, it's become kind of the new normal then to put a response to yourself, because it would go highest on the thing, to pitch your stuff.
Yes. I mean, it's a thing. It's a thing to do. Now that this has happened, now go.
But
follow
it's
me.
not a thing to do. No, it's cringy.
I know.
It's cringy, and people know it. Again, I think cringe culture and cancel culture and Karen culture, these are all related to our inability to understand attention and motive, because we don't have it for ourselves, so we have to anoint others with it.
What do you think? One of the things I feel most fortunate about is, and this is not a singular thing, but that I feel that I have a very purposeful life. Like, every day when I wake up, there's reason for me waking up, and it's not always the same thing, right? But the ways that my time gets spent have real purpose. Do you feel that we do I would say that my digital self and my engagement with technology has been greatly beneficial to me finding those purposes. It's not exclusively responsible for it, but it has been it's helped.
So did you structure this conversation this way on purpose, or is this just happening?
I'm just having a conversation with you. That's all.
So after you become technologically immersed, the next thing that happens is something I call time collapse. So suddenly how you spend time, what you do with time, absence of time, hyper focus, all of these things become apparent. And what you do outside of linear time, right? Whether it be algorithmic time, this is happening, or some other kind of esoteric thing. Maybe you're a pagan, a techno-pagan. That becomes amplified. And I think what you're articulating to me now is you kind of swum through the waters of digital awakening, and you're starting to say, okay, well, if I'm awakened enough, then time, and you mentioned values and purpose, right? Values and purpose are just shorthand for time awareness.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I buy that.
And I think once in your journey, Marcus, once you start to see all thought as temporal, you'll learn when you're outside of it. Because if you really want to mess with someone, move them outside of time. Kisses that last forever. All these things are temporal in nature. And I think once we can tap into what that means for each of us, suddenly the time isn't as important. It's what we do with the time. So for me, I have like 5 areas that I really focus on: health, home, family, service, and work. And those are kind of my temporal values. And everything I do, whether it's pay a bill or meet with someone, goes into one of those value buckets every single day. So my tracking system is pretty crazy, right? All right. But it's allowed me to start to saying, okay, my mood isn't tied to so much of how I spend my time. It's what that time means, right? So there's a larger system outside of me. and that system plugs into others. So if I can make 40% of my budget towards service and 30% of my, that's financial budget, and my physical budget, that to be 30% of service, and make sure that my family gets about 20%. And there's all sorts of apps and things. Life Cycle does this, other things. I'm probably going down a giant rabbit hole. But I guess what I'm trying to say is I think it's really important you keep talking about how you spend your time.
Okay. And we're going to get into the last topic, because this is honestly one of the things that I have found to be the most challenging in this pursuit of really being mindful about the devices and the ability to track, is the time spent managing the systems, the time spent analyzing. I'm good in some ways at that. So my calendar, for example, I have a dedicated time budget calendar that gets a lot of attention and is, pruned regularly and revisited based on what dynamics are going on in my life at any point in time. Right now, it's got a lot of slack in it, which I'm enjoying, as opposed to being very rigid, which it was at the beginning of the year. But there are moments, you mentioned the app Life Cycle, and that is an app that like Gyroscope doesn't get it right 100% of the time. And so you have to kind of correct it. And that, that time you spend correcting it for what is really helpful at the end, it's time, and I just wonder, I know you've run into this. I know you've run into this. So what?
Yeah, of course I have.
What is your feedback for me?
It's one of the first things I always get from people. It's like, doesn't it take you a lot of time to save all that data? I'm like, okay, you don't understand how easy it is. And then I get, doesn't take you a long time to analyze that. Okay, well, again, you're kind of missing the point. But I'm as susceptible to a lot of these pitfalls as anyone else, right? Except I've kind of developed a relationship that if I don't sleep well, I'm not looking at the data. It's just going to mess me up, right? If I've had a bad day, that's not the time to journal, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to amplify ugly, right? And technology has a way of amplifying it. This is where the idea of a mindful cyborg really comes online, right?
Yeah. This is good.
And anyone who's ever tracked their calories or their steps or their mood will tell you that you can really go on autopilot after a good while, because you're going, okay, I can do this and I can eat this and I don't have to worry about that because I've got these other things. But the reality is you change, you grow older, your body goes through change, a lot of other things. So you just can't live by 1,600 calories a day and 18 hours of fasting and 9 hours of sleep with 20 minutes of meditation. While it looks good on paper, that's an Instagram cyborg life. That's just not reality. Time blocking is just literally where lazy people go to have relationships with their future selves that they can feel bad about later upon reflecting on it. So I think what I like about Life Cycle and why I take time with my family. So every Sunday, my family gets together and we talk about what we did great last week. And we start out by just spending time. My husband and I, we start looking like, was there, what is it about last week? We feel it. We look, we're like, hey, I like going to this place. Then we talk about what do we want to feel this week? What are the things we want to feel? These aren't task lists. Yeah. These are heart lists, right? And I think there's a way that you can start to evolve to marry the two together. But I completely understand and empathize with what you're saying. And, if Life Cycle gets to be too much to you, don't use it. Don't use it for a day or two. I think, again, people get so caught up with, was it perfect data? Was it all the data?
Right.
That's like being, 9 in a candy store. And it's like, I get it. It's possible, but it's not right. You don't want to be 16 at a fat farm.
So that was super helpful. Specifically the sort of having the self-awareness to know sort of where you are and whether or not it's the right time to approach a particular activity, especially that engages with, I certainly can think back when I was drinking, there were times when I would be drinking and I would be in a bad mood and I would tweet. You know what I mean? And it's okay. It's fine. Nothing was ever a super disaster, but the next day when I would look at that tweet, I wouldn't be super thrilled about it. You know what I'm saying? And it's just, I do think that there is some understanding you have to be able to develop about yourself to know what you need depending on how you're feeling and what you're experiencing, and you may just reach for something because it's what you're used to doing, but you have to have that.
Do you track calories?
I do not track calories.
Okay. Do you track food and anything?
I do time restricted eating. and I eat what feels good. I do zero. I use the zero fasting app.
I use zero too. Yeah. You know what I love is I know so many people who will eat because they've got the calories too, or when zero ends, they'll eat. I mean, we've become so unbundled from our organic bodies.
Yeah, and I don't. I more track it like I use it like, okay, I'm gonna do a 16-8. And some days I'm like, hell no, I'm eating it 14 hours.
Good, you're fine.
And then some days I'm like, oh man, holy crap, it's been 18 hours and I haven't had a thing to eat. So some, I use it to kind of like just see where I fit. And I think they do a really good job on the app, by the way, because like if you set a 16-8 and then you go to like end it, it'll be like, great job, you just, did this for, like they never like say like, try again tomorrow. You know what I mean? Like, which I think they do a great job. Anyway.
You need to get Kevin on your show.
Kevin Rose?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. So, okay, quickly, let's talk about Don't Unplug, and then we'll wrap.
Sure. Unplug.
Yes.
So what do you mean to talk about it? The book or my philosophy around it?
No, the book. Talk about the book. Like for anyone who has never, heard of the book and now like heard this conversation is like, yeah, I want to know about this book. I want to go grab this book.
The book is a 10-year retrospective look at my life. So, again, it starts with me in my late 30s, severely unhealthy and very angry, spent a lot of time being very angry. I always tell people I mean well, right? Just trust me. I mean well. But no, and it goes through kind of my evolution and how I brought these systems online. It started with just tracking social media and evolved through that, through spiritual and a bunch of other areas. So it's a 10-year look, and it ends with me meeting my now husband 5 years ago and getting married, and how technology made our relationship more rich. I mean, my husband is blocked on every social channel from me, right? The people I really care about are blocked. Because what I found, at least for me, was when we connect to the people we love, we consume them like TV shows. And I needed to consume my spouse and the people who are really, you'll know you're close to me if you're blocked on social media.
Wow.
Right? Because that forces me into having relationships that don't treat you as a consumable. So the book is about that journey of going from like casually convenience challenged with technology to this is a fundamental tool to enrich and deepen relationships. It's just what I do with it.
That was amazing. So if you're not inspired to go grab a copy of the book after hearing that, I don't know what else we could have done for you. Chris, thank you so much, man. I learned so much every time we talk. Thank you.
Thank you
So much. Everybody out there. I know Chris said that, he blocks people that he really cares about, but you should go follow him. Okay. Like it's a good follow. So go follow.
Actually,
Chris.
But stop. Can I just say, please don't follow me?
No, you can't. It's my show. Sorry. Nope. Absolutely not. Go follow Chris. It's really fun. Right. At Chris Dancy on Twitter, on Instagram, chrisdancy.com. And yes, go follow. Look, seriously, it is a really fun follow. I'm just telling you, like you're going to get all this stuff that like is like consistently the same stuff. And Chris's stuff is just really, it feels like it's coming out of left field on your feed, and it's fun. And you can tell he doesn't like mean that much by it, but it's like there's not a ton of filter. It's just really fun stuff. Go follow him.
Thank you, Marcus.
You'll thank me. You'll thank me for it. My book, Create and Orchestrate in Stores. You've heard me talk about it. Go grab it. The podcast, Marcus Whitney's Audio Universe, and you can follow me online everywhere at Marcus Whitney. Yeah. That's it. I will see you all next week. Thank you so much for checking in, and until then, let's build a new normal, y'all. Peace.
Thank you for tuning in to Marcus Whitney's Audio Universe.